All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something super important, the art of non-redundant code. Look, there's code that, well, it works. And then there's code that's actually a joy to read, to maintain, and to build on. That's what we're talking about today. So let's jump right in. You got to remember this one simple truth, because it's really the heart of everything we're going to talk about. We get so caught up in making the computer understand us, we forget who the real audience is. It's not the machine. It's the next human who has to look at this stuff. Could be your teammate, could be your future self trying to figure out what on earth you were thinking 6 months ago. So that leads to the big question, right? If we know we're writing for other people, why do we so often make our code incredibly hard to read? It's a real head-scratcher. We're going to dig into why this happens, and this is the important part, how we can start to fix it. Okay, so to really get a handle on this problem, think of redundant code like this. It's a hidden tax, a cognitive tax that gets charged to anyone who tries to read it. You don't see it on a bill, but it's a real cost. It slows you down, it drains your brain power, one confusing line at a time. Now, this might look super simple, but the difference here is actually huge. On the left, you're making the reader's brain do two things. First, it sees a variable exists. Then, it has to go hunt for its value. But the version on the right, boom, it's all there in one go. You get everything you need right away. That's what we call higher information density. And honestly, it's just about respecting the next person's time. Oh man, we see this one all the time. That meaningless temporary variable. Look at the code on the left. That ret variable, its entire life's purpose is to hand off a value to the very next line, and that's it. Now, you hear the excuse, right? Oh, I'm just planning for the future, I might need to debug it later. But the source material is really clear on this. Giving up clarity today for some imaginary future you're just guessing at, that is almost always a terrible trade-off. So you're probably thinking, if this is so inefficient, why is this kind of code everywhere? Well, the answer isn't as simple as, oh, developers are just lazy or bad at their jobs. Not at all. The reasons are usually way deeper. They're systemic. They're actually baked into the very way we learn to code and the way we work together. The source breaks it down into 4 main culprits. First up, beginner habits. You know those tutorials that teach things in tiny, separate steps? Well, those habits can stick around for years. Then you've got debugging shortcuts. We've all done it. You throw in a temporary variable to check a value, but then you forget to take it out. On top of that, you have simple team misunderstandings. Someone says, make the code clear, and what they hear is make it as wordy as possible. And last but not least, there are just plain outdated rules. Some teams are still working off old playbooks where this kind of redundancy was mistakenly seen as a good, safe practice. Okay, so we've spent some time diagnosing the problem. Now for the good part. Let's talk about the cure. The source gives us a really practical toolkit, a set of principles we can use to write cleaner code and, maybe more importantly, to build better habits. So here they are. These 5 guidelines really lay out a clear path. First, you have to question your variables. Ask yourself, does this variable actually mean something? If it does, great. Then ask, can I initialize it in one clean step? Next, you got to focus on clarity for right now, not for some guess about the future. And this one's huge. When you're done, clean up after yourself. Get rid of all that temporary debugging stuff. Finally, this all gets supercharged when it becomes a team thing, when spotting redundancy is just part of every code review. I want to pause on that 3rd guideline for a second because it is so important. It's a famous principle in software development called YAGNI, which stands for you aren't going to need it. This is your weapon against the urge to add all this extra complexity now for some feature you think you might need down the road. This is probably one of the biggest sources of code clutter out there. The rule is simple. Just solve the problem you have today with the simplest, clearest code possible. Okay, so you might be thinking, that sounds like a lot of work, a lot of discipline. What's the payoff? Well, the benefits are real, and they go way beyond just making your code look pretty. We're talking about tangible, professional wins that make the entire development process better for everyone. And the professional payoff is huge. For starters, your code is just easier to read. That means your code reviews are faster and way more effective. When you get rid of those extra variables, you make the code more resilient to future changes, and you seriously cut down on the risk of bugs from accidental reassignments.
And that's the bottom line, isn't it? Simpler code just has fewer dark corners for bugs to hide in.
Hey, remember that hidden tax we were talking about earlier? Well, this is what it looks like. This is it in action. That bar for redundant code, that's the amount of brain power someone has to burn just to understand it. It's so much higher. Every single time you choose the concise path, you're literally saving your team's mental energy. You're letting them focus on solving real problems instead of wasting time trying to decode what you wrote. So this all brings us to the final, most important takeaway. Writing clean, non-redundant code, it's not about being clever, it's not about being elegant, it's about being a professional. It's an act of consideration for the other people on your team. And it all comes down to one simple core idea. And that idea is cognitive load. That's the fancy scientific term for what we've been talking about this whole time. It's just the amount of mental effort you have to use to understand something. Every extra variable, every pointless line of code, it all adds to the cognitive load on your reader. And your job as a professional is to make that load as light as possible. And so we're left with the one question that the source says every single developer should ask themselves before they commit their code. It's not just, does it work? We have to go deeper. You have to ask yourself this: how much useless work is this code forcing on the reader's brain? If you can answer that question honestly and act on it, well, that's the real foundation of becoming a great software developer. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.